Chevrolet, colloquially referred to as Chevy and formerly the Chevrolet division of General Motors LLC, is an American automobile division of the American manufacturer General Motors. Louis Chevrolet and ousted General Motors founder William C. Durant started the company on November 3, 1911 as the Chevrolet Motor Car Company. Durant used the Chevrolet Motor Car Company to acquire a controlling stake in General Motors with a reverse merger occurring on May 2, 1918 and propelled himself back to the GM presidency. After Durant's second ouster in 1919, Alfred Sloan, with his maxim "a car for every purse and purpose," would pick the Chevrolet brand to become the volume leader in the General Motors family, selling mainstream vehicles to compete with Henry Ford's Model T in 1919 and overtaking the Model T as the best-selling car in the United States by 1929. Chevrolet-branded vehicles are sold in most automotive markets worldwide, with the notable exception of Oceania, where GM is represented by their Australian subsidiary, Holden. In 2005, Chevrolet was relaunched in Europe, primarily selling vehicles built by GM Daewoo of South Korea, with the tagline "Daewoo has grown up enough to become Chevrolet," a move rooted in General Motors' attempt to build a global brand around Chevrolet. With the reintroduction of Chevrolet to Europe, GM intends for Chevrolet to be a mainstream value brand, while GM's traditional European standard-bearers, Opel of Germany, and Vauxhall of England will be moved up market. However, GM reversed this move in late 2013, announcing that the brand would be withdrawn from Europe, with the exception of the Camaro and Corvette in 2016. After General Motors fully acquired GM Daewoo in 2011 to create GM Korea, the last usage of the Daewoo automotive brand was discontinued in its native South Korea and succeeded by Chevrolet. In North America, Chevrolet produces and sells a wide range of vehicles, from subcompact automobiles to medium-duty commercial trucks. Due to the prominence and name recognition of Chevrolet as one of General Motors' global marks, Chevrolet, Chevy or Chev is used at times as a synonym for General Motors or its products, one example being the GM LS1 engine, commonly known by the name or a variant thereof of its progenitor, the Chevrolet small block engine. History. On November 3, 1911, Swiss race car driver and automotive engineer Louis Chevrolet co-founded the Chevrolet Motor Company in Detroit with William C. Durant and investment partners William Little and Dr. Edwin A. Campbell, and in 1912 R.S. McLaughlin, CEO of General Motors in Canada. Durant was cast out from the management of General Motors in 1910 for 5 years. He took over the Flint Wagon Works, incorporating the Mason and Little companies. As head of Buick Motor Company prior to founding GM, Durant had hired Louis Chevrolet to drive Buicks in promotional races. Durant planned to use Chevrolet's reputation as a racer as the foundation for his new automobile company. Actual design work for the first Chevy, the costly Series C Classic 6, was drawn up by Etienne Planche, following instructions from Louis. The first C prototype was ready months before Chevrolet was actually incorporated. However, the first actual production wasn't until the 1913 model. So in essence there were no 1911 or 1912 production models, only the one pre-production model was made and fine-tuned throughout the early part of 1912. Then in the fall of that year the new 1913 model was introduced at the New York Auto Show. Chevrolet first used the Boaty emblem logo in 1914 on the H-Series models and the L-Series model. It may have been designed from wallpaper Durant once saw in a French hotel room. More recent research by historian Ken Kaufman presents a case that the logo is based on a logo of the Coalette's Coal Company. Others claim that the design was a stylized Swiss cross, in tribute to the homeland of Chevrolet's parents. Louis Chevrolet had differences with Durant over design and in 1915 sold Durant his share in the company. By 1916, Chevrolet was profitable enough with successful sales of the cheaper Series 490 to allow Durant to repurchase a controlling interest in General Motors. After the deal was completed in 1917, Durant became president of General Motors, and Chevrolet was merged into GM as a separate division. In 1919, Chevrolet's factories were located at New York City, Tarrytown, New York, Flint, Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, St. Louis, Missouri; Oakland, California; Fort Worth, Texas; and Oshawa, Ontario. General Motors of Canada Limited, McLaughlins were given GM Corporation stock for the proprietorship of their company. Article September 23, 1933. Financial Post, page 9. In the 1918 model year, Chevrolet introduced the Series D, a V8-powered model in 4-passenger Roadster and 5-passenger Tourer models. Sales were poor and it was dropped in 1919. Chevrolet continued into the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s competing with Ford, and after the Chrysler Corporation formed Plymouth in 1928, Plymouth, Ford, and Chevrolet were known as the low-priced three. In 1933 Chevrolet launched the Standard 6, which was advertised in the United States as the cheapest six-cylinder car on sale. Chevrolet had a great influence on the American automobile market during the 1950s and 1960s. In 1953 it produced the Corvette, a two-seater sports car with a fiberglass body. In 1957 Chevy introduced its first fuel-injected engine, the Rochester Ramjet option on Corvette and passenger cars, priced at $484. In 1960 it introduced the Chevy, with a rear-mounted air-cooled engine. In 1963 1 out of every 10 cars sold in the United States was a Chevrolet. During the 1960s and early 1970s, the standard Chevrolet, particularly the Deluxe Impala series, became one of America's best-selling lines of automobiles in history. The basic Chevrolet small-block V8 design has remained in continuous production since its debut in 1955, longer than any other mass-produced engine in the world, although current versions share few if any parts interchangeable with the original. Descendants of the basic small-block OHV V8 design platform in production today have been much modified with advances such as aluminium block and heads, electronic engine management, and sequential port fuel injection. Depending on the vehicle type, Chevrolet V8s are built-in displacements from 4.3 to 9.4 liters with outputs ranging from 111 horsepower to 994 horsepower as installed at the factory. The engine design has also been used over the years in GM products built and sold under the Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, Hummer, Opel, and Holden nameplates. In 2005, General Motors relaunched the Chevrolet marque in Europe, using rebadged versions of the Daewoo cars produced by GM Korea. The Chevrolet division has largely recovered from the economic downturn of 2007–2010 through launching new vehicles and improving existing lines. GM began developing more fuel-efficient cars and trucks to compete with foreign automakers. In late 2010 General Motors began production of the plug-in electric Chevrolet Volt, which later was announced as the 2012 North American Car of the Year, European Car of the Year, and World Green Car of the Year. International operations. As of 2010 Chevrolet had operations in over 140 countries, and global sales in 2011 set a record with 4.76 million vehicles sold worldwide. North America, Canada. Mexico. Mexico has a mix of Chevrolet models from different GM brands and platforms branded as Chevrolet. The models come from Chevrolet USA, GM Korea, Mexico and other origins. Examples of Opel-sourced vehicles are Vectra, Astra, Corsa, Meriva, Zafira and Captiva. Mexico also has some cars of its own, such as the Chevy C2, which is a reworked older generation Corsa B vehicles based on U.S. platforms of the Avalanche, the Suburban, the Equinox, the Tahoe, the Cheyenne, the Aveo, the HHR, the Traverse, the Malibu, the Camaro and the Corvette. The Chevrolet Optra, assembled in South Korea by GM Korea, was also sold in Mexico. The European Epica was sold as a business-only vehicle. GM also manufactures Chevrolet vehicles such as the Suburban and Avalanche in Mexico for export to other markets, chiefly the US and Canada. Asia. China. In 2009 China became Chevrolet's third-largest market, with sales of 332,774 vehicles, behind only the United States and Brazil. By 2010, Chevy sold just over 500,000, with the Cruze being its best seller there. India. Launched by GM's India operations, Chevrolet is among the more recent auto brands. Until 2003, GM India Euro, originally a joint venture with Hindustan Motors, sold the Opel Corsa, Opel Astra and the Opel Vectra. Chevrolet officially began business in India on June 6, 2003. The Corsa and Astra were built at a plant in Halol, Gujarat. Chevrolet currently sells the Chevrolet Cruze, Chevrolet Spark, Chevrolet Optra, Chevrolet Aveo, Chevrolet Tavera, Chevrolet Captiva, Chevrolet CR-V, Chevrolet Beat, Chevrolet Sail and Chevrolet Aveo Uvar. The Chevrolet Forester, a rebadged Subaru, was imported directly from Fuji Heavy Industries in Japan until 2005. The Cruze and Tavera are built at the Halol plant. Chevrolet also is the sole engine supplier for the Formula Roland single-seater series in India. Japan, from 1995 to 2000, Toyota, in an agreement with GM, sold the third-generation model Chevrolet Cavalier as the Toyota Cavalier in Japan in exchange for the Geo Chevrolet Prism in an effort to avoid additional restrictions on their exports to the U.S. In the mid-2000s, Suzuki imported and marketed the Chevrolet Trailblazer and the Chevrolet Optra wagon in Japan. Suzuki, a Gram partner, also assembled and marketed the Chevrolet MW Microvan. The MW was originally a rebadged Suzuki Wagoner Plus and later a rebadged Suzuki Solio. Suzuki had also marketed the Chevrolet Cruze subcompact in the past. General Motors Japan Limited currently distributes and markets the Sonic, Captiva, Camaro, and Corvette in limited numbers through an agreement with Yanis Company, Limited dealerships. In the 2000s, General Motors Asia Pacific had distributed and marketed the Trailblazer also. As of 2010, Mitsui Bussen Automotive distributes and markets the Chevrolet Tahoe, Chevrolet Express, Chevrolet HHR, Silverado, and Traverse. Previously, it had also marketed the StarCraft versions of the G-Van and Chevrolet Trailblazer. Mitsui Bussen Automotive had been importing and distributing certain GM models since 1992. But will cease their GM import business in November 2011, as GM Japan wants to consolidate the distribution channels. The Chevrolet models that have been imported by Mitsui will no longer be sold once existing inventories are depleted. Thus there were 3 distinct distribution channels for Chevrolet-branded vehicles at one time in Japan. Malaysia, between 2003 and 2009, a joint venture between GM and DRBHICOM, called Hypermobile, marketed the Chevrolet Aveo, Chevrolet Optra, Chevrolet Nabira and Chevrolet Lumina. The joint venture was succeeded with NASA in 2010. Middle East. In the Middle East, Chevrolet badged cars, trucks, SUVs, and crossovers are sourced from GM Korea, GM in North America, and GM Holden. The Middle East market has a separate division called Chevrolet Special Vehicles, which sources the high-performance 400 bhp CR8 sedan from Holden Special Vehicles. The Holden Commodore is badged as the Chevrolet Lumina in the Middle East, as well as South Africa. The longer wheelbase Holden Caprice is sold as the Chevrolet Caprice in the Middle East. The Middle East fleet also includes the likes of Cruze, Malibu and Sonic in the sedan category, Captiva in the SUV category, Tahoe and Traverse in the wagon category and Avalanche and Silverado in the truck category. Pakistan. In Pakistan, Chevrolet introduced its cars in collaboration with a local automobile manufacturer called Nexus Automotive. The current lineup available from Chevrolet Pakistan includes Chevrolet Optra, Chevrolet Spark, Chevrolet Joy, Chevrolet Aveo, and Chevrolet Colorado. The company plans to add Chevrolet Captiva, Chevrolet Epica and Chevrolet Cruze to its lineup in the future. Philippines. Chevrolet's Philippine operations are under the control of the Covenant Car Company Incorporated. The company was officially incorporated on July 1, 2009 and assumed business operations on October 1, 2009. 19 dealerships have been established around the country as of 2012. Its current lineup include the Chevrolet Aveo, Chevrolet Camaro, Chevrolet Captiva, Chevrolet Colorado, Chevrolet Cruze, Chevrolet Orlando, Chevrolet Spark, Chevrolet Sonic, Chevrolet Suburban, Chevrolet Tahoe, Chevrolet Trailblazer and the Chevrolet Traverse. South Korea. Many global market Chevrolet vehicles are designed and manufactured by GM Korea of South Korea, but they had been sold under Daewoo brand in South Korea until February 2011. Daewoo brand was fully replaced by Chevrolet in March 2011. All Daewoo products relaunched under Chevrolet brand, with the release of Chevrolet Camaro, Chevrolet Orlando and Chevrolet Aveo. Thailand. The American-built Chevrolet Colorado pickup is also manufactured in Rayong, Thailand. The Holden Commodore is badged as the Chevrolet Lumina in Thailand. General Motors is currently exploring cost-cutting options as part of its restructuring plan. One of these options involve expanding the Rayong, Thailand plant to add additional capacity to export Colorados to the U.S. This would allow the Shreveport, Louisiana plant to be closed. This scenario is plausible only if a free trade agreement is signed between the U.S. and Thailand, as the American tariff on imported pickup trucks from non-FTA countries is currently 25%. The United Auto Workers is the most vocal opponent to a change in the tariff structure. In addition to the Colorado pickup trucks, General Motors began assembling Chevrolet Captiva sport utility vehicle in its Rayong plant during June 2007. The Thai-assembled Captiva is based on Theta platform under the program code C100. Also produced at the General Motors Rayong plant are the Chevrolet Aveo and Chevrolet Cruze. Production, retail sales and registration of Chevrolet brand in Thailand during 2011, Uzbekistan. General Motors Uzbekistan, or GM Uzbekistan, became the new name of Daewoo Auto in March 2008 as part of a new joint venture owned by Yusuf Tozano JSC and General Motors Corporation with a factory in Azerka producing a variety of Chevrolet models. Currently, in Uzbekistan producing models, such as, Damas, Matiz, Nexia, Spark, Epica, Malibu and Captiva. Australia. Even though the Australian market of today mainly consists of Australia's own automotive companies alongside Asian automobile brands, Australia once had its fair share of American cars as well. Bodies for the local assembly of Chevrolets were built in Australia as early as 1918 and by 1926 the newly created General Motors Proprietary Limited had established assembly plants in 5 Australian states to produce Chevrolet and other GM vehicles using bodies supplied by Holden Motor Body Builders. The merger of General Motors Proprietary Limited with the troubled Holden Motor Body Builders in 1931 saw the creation of General Motors Euro Holdens and the ongoing production of various GM products including Chevrolet. GMH departed from traditional U.S. body styles with the release of the Chevrolet Coupe Utility in 1934 and the Chevrolet Slowpoke Coupe in 1935. Post-war production recommenced in 1946. From 1949 Australian Chevrolets were to be locally assembled from components imported from Chevrolet in Canada, although local production of the coupe utility body continued until 1952. 1968 was the last full year of Chevrolet assembly in Australia. Classic Chevrolet models such as Bel Air, Biscayne, Impala etc., are still found in many states around Australia. From the early 1970s to the early 1980s the Chevrolet name was also used on various light commercials in Australia. These ranged from the LUV to the third-generation C-Series trucks. From 1998 to 2001 the Chevrolet Suburban was sold in Australia as the Holden Suburban. Chevrolet and Holden share a number of models and model names including Malibu, Caprice, Colorado, Volt, Spark Barina Spark, Sonic Barina, Cruze and VF Commodore Chevrolet SS. The Holden VF Commodore is exported from Australia to the United States as the Chevrolet SS. South Africa. In South Africa, Chevrolet was GM's main brand name until 1982, with a number of Vauxhall Motors and Holden derivatives being built under the Chevy name from 1964. In the 1970s, the advertising jingle Brea-Vleis, Rugby, Sunny Skies and Chevrolet came to epitomize the ideal lifestyle of white male South Africans. Holden in Australia used the jingle Football, Meat Pies, Kangaroos and Holden cars. Originally, Chevrolets were CKD kits of U.S. models assembled in their plant in Port Elizabeth. However, since South Africa was right-hand drive and the U.S. was left-hand drive, along with encouragement by the South African government to use local content. Chevrolets such as the Biscayne were eventually made entirely in South Africa, along with GM's own car for South Africa, the Ranger. By the 1970s, larger South African Chevrolets were based on Australian General Motors Holden's models, the Commando being based on the Holden Kingwood and the Constantia on the Statesman, while the smaller Forenza was based on the Vauxhall Viva. The Chevrolet Nomad sold in South Africa was entirely different from the Nomad sold in America. Whereas the American Nomad was originally conceived as a station wagon version of the Corvette and eventually became the station wagon version of the Bel Air, the South African Nomad was an SUV of truck proportions before SUVs were popular. Due to local content laws, the cars usually received different engines than in their home markets. However, these were replaced by Opel models like the Record, Commodore, and Senator, and in 1982 the Chevrolet brand name was dropped in favor of Opel. Because of the political climate at the time, GM decided to divest from South Africa in 1986, and a local group eventually bought out GM's South African operations and renamed the company Delta Motor Corporation, which concentrated on Opels, Isuzus, and Suzukis, built under license. However, thanks to an improved political climate in the 1990s, GM decided to re-enter South Africa, eventually buying out the whole of Delta. In 2001, the Chevrolet name made a comeback, used on the Lumina, a rebadged Holden Commodore, and later on the Daewoo range of cars. Current Chevrolets include the Spark Lite, Spark, Aveo sedan and hatch, the Sonic sedan and hatch, Cruise sedan and hatch, the Lumina sedan, the Chevrolet Orlando, the Chevrolet Captiva, a mid-size sport utility vehicle developed by GM Daewoo, the South Korean subsidiary of General Motors and sold under the Chevrolet brand, the Chevrolet Trailblazer, and a pickup version which was previously based on the Opel Corsa known as the Corsa Ute. But the current model, which in collaboration with GM Brazil who developed it, is the Chevrolet Utility, which is based on the Chevrolet Aguila platform. Europe. Chevrolet Europe GmbH is a Swiss-based firm that mainly sells cars produced by GM Korea. Until 2005, Chevrolet Europe sold a few models, mostly United States domestic market models modified to suit European regulations. Among them were the Chevrolet Alero and the Chevrolet Transport. Among other models sold by Chevrolet Europe were the Camaro, the Corsica Beretta, the Corvette, the Blazer, and the Trailblazer. The current generation of North Americana Euro-built Chevrolet Impala V8 sedans has also been available in Europe in recent years, marketed as both large family sedans and more economically priced alternatives to Jaguars and BMWs as high-performance executive cars. From 2005 all the mainstream models from GM Daewoo were rebranded as Chevrolet in Europe. However, the Daewoo name was retained in South Korea and Vietnam until 2011. In the rest of the world, most Daewoo models have worn the Chevrolet badge since 2003. Exceptions include the use of the Suzuki badge in the United States and Canada, the Pontiac badge in Canada, the Holden badge in Australia and New Zealand, and the Buick badge in China. During the mid-2000s, the Corvette and Cadillac range were marketed in Europe through a separate distribution channel operated by Netherlands-based Kroijmans Corporation Group, but following their bankruptcy in 2010, General Motors established a new Swiss-based subsidiary to relaunch Chevrolet in Europe and add the Corvette, Camaro and Malibu models to the European range. In December 2013, General Motors announced that from the beginning of 2016 it will reduce its presence in Europe only to its iconic models, such as the Corvette, in order to strengthen its Opel and Vauxhall brands. It will maintain its broad presence in Russia and the Commonwealth of Independent States. Chevrolet sales in Western and Central Europe ranged around 200,000 units per year since 2005, peaking at 216,160 units in 2007, while the market share achieved its highest of 1.28% in 2012. In Russia, sales grew constantly over the same period, from 67,000 units in 2005 to 205,040 units in 2012, Chevrolet holding a market share of 6.84% and being the top import car brand. In 2012, the top markets for Chevrolet in Europe, by the number of registrations, were Italy, Germany, France, Turkey and Spain. The best-selling model during the same year was the Aveo, followed by the Spark and the Cruise. Poland. During World War II in Poland Home Army the Polish resistance movement built an improvised armored car, Kibor, which was based on the chassis of a civilian Chevrolet 157 truck, license built in pre-war Poland by the Lilpop, Rowie Lowenstein Company. The car was used against the German army in Warsaw during the Warsaw Uprising in 1944. The damaged Kibor survived the war and in 1945 was towed to the Polish Army Museum where it is currently on exhibition. A full-scale operational replica was created in 2004 by Julia Sudziewski and is, as of 2009, on exhibition at the Warsaw Uprising Museum. Between the autumn of 2007 and the beginning of 2011, the Chevrolet Aveo was produced at the FSO plant in Warsaw, in collaboration with the Ukrainian company Ukravto, in both hatchback and sedan body styles. Russia. In Russia, various GM Daewoo and US Chevrolet models are available. GM Avtovaz is a joint venture between GM and the Russian company Avtovaz established in 2001, which produces the Chevrolet Neva, an SUV especially designed for the Russian market and conditions. General Motors also operates the GM Avto factory, located in St. Petersburg and opened in 2008. It was upgraded in 2012 and has produced the Opel Antara and Chevrolet Captiva SUVs, the Chevrolet Cruze from late 2009, and the Trailblazer from semi-knockdown kits. In collaboration with the Russian company GAZ, the new Chevrolet Aveo is produced at the plant in Nizhny Novgorod for the Russian market, starting from the beginning of 2013. Chevrolet vehicles were also produced at the Avtotar plant, located in Kaliningrad. The models produced here were the Lacetti, Aveo, Epica, Captiva, Orlando and Tahoe. South America. Historically, many Latin American market vehicles from GM were modified derivatives of older models from GM's North American and European operations. The current S10 and Blazer exemplify this strategy. However, more modern vehicles are now being marketed as market conditions change and competition increases. Besides those older models made in Mexico, Ecuador, Colombia, and Mercosur countries, Korean-sourced cars from former Daewoo factories. Some markets also get Korean and US-made Chevrolet on top of their local lineups. Argentina. In 1924 General Motors started importing Chevrolet double Phaeton models and were welcomed with great demand. In 1925, in order to reduce costs in the Argentine market, General Motors decided to manufacture in Argentina and started producing a sedan, a roadster, a truck chassis and the Chevrolet double Phaeton, now called a Special Argentino, a model exclusively designed for the Argentinian market. Sales increased and soon the Oldsmobile, Oakland and Pontiac units were incorporated to the assembly line. When the Second World War broke out the operations were complicated. In 1941 the Chevrolet 250.000 was made, but the shortage of products made car production impossible. The last Chevrolet went out of the plant in August, 1942. In order to avoid the total stoppage, the company made electrical and portable refrigerators and car accessories amongst other items. After the war, GM started producing the Oldsmobile and Pontiac lines and later Chevrolet is added. In 1959, manufacturing plants are enlarged and set up to produce cars, pickups and trucks. On January 25, 1960 the first Argentinian Chevrolet pickup was introduced. The following year the national government approves the investment plan for $45 million which included a plant of 12,000 m2. On March 12, 1962 the first Chevrolet 400 was made based on the North American Chevy 2. The original plan considered a national integration of 50% during the first year of production. This amount had to be 90% in 1964 with a production of 15,000 units. By 1969, the Chevy line, derived from the American Chevy Nova, was presented. In the middle of the 70s, General Motors' market share was reduced sharply from 9% in 1976 to 2% in 1978. Losses exceeded $30 a million and the head company in the USA decided to halt production activities in Argentina. The Chevrolet trademark reappeared in 1985 for the production of the pickup in its versions C20 and D20. In 1995, a plan for the manufacturing destined for export specially to Brazil and other countries of Mercosur materialized with the building of a new facility near Rosario, Santa Fe, for the production of the Opel-based Chevrolet Corsa and the Suzuki-based Chevrolet Grand Vitara 4x4. By 2010 the range was based on a variety of GM Korea-based cars, together with the Brazilian Chevrolet Prisma. Brazil. In Brazil, the Chevrolet Opala was based on the German Opel Rekord and American Chevrolet Nova from the late 1960s, continuing in production until the early 1990s, when it was replaced by a version of the Opel Omega. In the basic version had 151 four-cylinder engine with 82 HP and 143.2 lb-ft. The top-of-the-line version was called Opala SS and used the GM engine 250S inline six-cylinder and possessed solid lifters with 171 HP and 278.5 lb-ft, which led to the record-breaking South American speed road cars in 1976, with 118.36 mph, beating the Puma GTB and the Brazilian version of the Dodge Charger R/T318 and Ford Maverick V8 302 Quadrajet. Other smallish Chevrolets in Brazil, such as the Cadet and Monza, were based on the Opel Cadet and Ascona respectively. Chevrolet's product lineup in Brazil comprised some exclusive designs like the Corsa B-based Celta, which was sold in Argentina under the Suzuki brand, the Astra, and a Brazilian-designed Vectra based on the Opel Astra H. The passenger car range currently includes the Cruze, the Captiva, the Agile hatchback, Chevrolet Onix. The latest homegrown product is the Chevrolet Prisma MKII, released in 2013. Utility and four-wheel drive vehicles lineup includes the S10, the Blazer, and the Montana. The Montana is a compact pickup truck, based on the Agile, that is also sold in other Latin American markets. From the 1960s to the mid-1980s, there was also a large station wagon, derived from the C10 truck, called the Verenuo. Chile has a mix of Chevrolet models from different GM brands and platforms branded as Chevrolet. The models come for Chevrolet USA, GM Korea, Mexico, India and other origins. Chevrolet production in Chile began in 1962. Although at first through local partners. The Chevrolet CK truck was manufactured in Chile between 1975–88. Ecuador, Chevrolet has been operating in Ecuador for 80 years. GM Ecuador sells U.S. Chevrolets alongside GM Korea-sourced models. It also sells the 1983 Suzuki Super Carry under the Chevrolet name, and the Isuzu Rodeo was sold as the Chevrolet Rodeo throughout the 1990s. Venezuela. In Venezuela, Chevrolet has been operating since 1948, when truck production began in Caracas. In 1979 production moved to a plant in Valencia that was purchased from Chrysler. Chevrolet assembled more than 1,500,000 vehicles in its first 50 years in Venezuela. Colombia. The Colombian Automotive Factory S.A. was founded in 1956 and initially produced vehicles in Austin. In the 60s, Simca and Dodge automobiles. And then, in 1980, began producing Chevrolet cars. Currently Cole Motors has more than 75% of the domestic market, with models from GM Korea and Suzuki. Particularly worthy of mention is the Aveo, Optra and the Spark. Trinidad and Tobago. Since the early 1920s, Chevrolet cars and trucks were marketed in this country. The Master Deluxe sedan of the late 1930s was considered to be a pinnacle of luxury. All cars sold through the local dealer, Neal and Massey, were right-hand drive, and imported from Canada and Australia. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, GM maintained a market presence with the Bel Air, Impala and Flatline. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, Australian Holden DeVille's badged as Chevrolet Caprices were sold, though a few Islander limited edition American Chevrolet Caprices were imported. Neal and Massey gave up the GM franchise in 1974 and the brand left the market. During the period 1998 to Euro 2001, Southern Sales Limited imported the Chevy Monza and Joy. Based on the Opel Corsa platform and assembled in Mexico, these were the cheapest new cars available. Poor build quality, unprofessional dealer service, and a limited spare part supply saw these cars exit the market with only a few units being sold. In 2003, the local Renault dealer marketed the Aveo sedan and hatchback, as well as the Optra sedan, with limited success. A more intensive marketing campaign by the latest Chevrolet dealer, Lifestyle Motors, has met more success. The models available are the Chevrolet Colorado, Spark, Aveo sedan and hatchback, Optra sedan, hatchback and wagon, the Captiva SUV, and the Epica large saloon. In March 2011, the Cruze was added to the lineup and features a 1.8-liter gasoline engine. It bridges the gap between Optra and Epica models. Once the Optra is phased out, a 1.6-liter Cruze will be made available. Vehicle models. Sport. Chevrolet enters a variety of cars in sporting events around the world and is particularly well known in NASCAR, IndyCar, and the FIA World Touring Car Championship. NASCAR, major teams include Hendrick Motorsports, Richard Childress Racing, Chip Ganassi Racing and Stewart-Haas Racing, who all drive Chevy SS-themed cars. Hendrick has 10 championships, RCR has 6 championships, Stewart-Haas has 1 championship. Chevrolet is the most successful manufacturer to be involved in NASCAR with 35 manufacturers' titles and the most recorded wins by manufacturer. Previously the Chevy Monte Carlo and Impala were used. IndyCar, major teams include Team Penske, KV Racing, Chip Ganassi Racing and Ed Carpenter Racing, who all use Chevy engines. After several years of Honda being the only engine provider, Chevrolet provided strong competition after rejoining the series in 2012 by winning several races including the 2013 Indianapolis 500. Tudor United Sports Car Championship. The Corvette runs in the GT Le Mans class for Tudor United Sports Car Championship, which was, until 2014, the American Le Mans series in the GT class, when ALMS merged with Grand Am to form Tudor United Sports Car Championship. Corvette racing started in 1999 at the Daytona 24-hour race and has since won 8 consecutive ALMS GT1 manufacturers and team championships and 7 ALMS GT1 drivers' titles. The Corvette also takes part in the French 24 Hours of Le Mans race. FIA World Touring Car Championship. In 2005, when the Chevrolet brand was relaunched in Europe, Chevrolet took part in the WTCC with a version of the Lacetti, developed by the UK-based Ray Mallock Limited. In 2009 the Cruze replaced the Lacetti and in 2010 won the Drivers' and Manufacturers' Championship. British Touring Car Championship. Chevrolet participated in the BTCC with the Cruze between 2010 and 2011. British football. In May 2012, Chevrolet replaced Audi as the official car sponsor of the British football team Manchester United, and from the start of the 2014-15 season Chevrolet would become the team's shirt sponsor. The deal is contracted to run for 7 years. In July 2012, Chevrolet and English Premier League football team Liverpool FC announced a 4-year partnership which would see Chevrolet become the official automotive partner of the club. Marketing. Chevrolet Boaty logo. The Chevrolet Boaty logo was introduced by company co-founder William C. Durant in late 1913. According to an official company publication titled The Chevrolet Story of 1961, the logo originated in Durant's imagination when, as a world traveler in 1908, he saw the pattern marching off into infinity as a design on wallpaper in a French hotel. He tore off a piece of the sport wallpapers and kept it to show friends, with the thought that it would make a good nameplate for a car. However, in an interview with Durant's widow, Catherine, published in a 1986 issue of Chevrolet Pro Management magazine, Catherine recalled how she and her husband were on holiday in Hot Springs, Virginia, in 1912. While reading a newspaper in their hotel room, Durant spotted a design and exclaimed, "I think this would be a very good emblem for the Chevrolet." Unfortunately, at the time, Mrs. Durant didn't clarify what the motif was or how it was used. Ken Kaufman, historian and editor of the Chevrolet Review, discovered in a November 12, 1911 edition of the Constitution newspaper, published in Atlanta, an advertisement appeared from by the Southern Compressed Coal Company for coalettes, a refined fuel product for fires. The coalettes logo, as published in the ad, had a slanted boaty form, very similar to the shape that would soon become the Chevrolet icon. The date of the paper was just 9 days after the incorporation of the Chevrolet Motor Company. One other explanation attributes the design to a stylized version of the cross of the Swiss flag. Louis Chevrolet was born in Switzerland at La Chaux-de-Fonds, canton of Neuchâtel, to French parents, on Christmas Day 1878. An October 2, 1913 edition of the Washington Post seems, so far, to be the earliest known example of the symbol being used to advertise the brand. The first boaty logo without embedded text first appeared in 1985, as part of the Heartbeat of America ad campaign. In 2004, Chevrolet began to phase in the gold boaty that serves as the brand identity for all of its cars and trucks marketed globally. Typography. The Clavica condensed font was designed by Type Design Studio Process Type Foundry under the art direction of Aaron Carambula for General Motors market future brand as part of Chevrolet's 2006 redesign. After the expiry of the exclusivity period, the commercial version of the font was released to the public in the fall of 2008. In the Young Creative Chevrolet Corporate Identity Guidelines, Clavica is listed for use in all communication materials. Clavica was phased out beginning in 2012 and replaced by Knockout while the campaign was still ongoing. Currently, Goodby, Silverstein and Partners is utilizing the typeface family's Louis, a group of simplified, legible grotesque Gothics named after co-founder Louis Chevrolet, and Durant, a Roman group, just as simplified and legible, named after co-founder William Durant, on print, television and Chevrolet's website advertisements. 100th anniversary. As part of Chevrolet's 100th anniversary in 2011, a dedicated channel was created by the American internet-based Pandora radio station, playing the top 100 songs mentioning the brand. Beginning on November 3, 2011, Chevrolet celebrated the countdown to its 100th birthday by encouraging its customers and fans to tell their Chevy stories, vote for their favorite Chevrolet cars and trucks, and take the birthday party to their communities with the help of Chevrolet and its dealers. A feature-length documentary titled Chevy 100, An American Story, produced by Roger Sherman, was premiered on November 3 at Detroit Institute of Arts in downtown Detroit, features drivers, collectors, restorers, racers and journalists who live and breathe cars and trucks. In honor of the 100th birthday of Chevrolet, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Chevrolet and Indianapolis businessman David Ring have arranged to properly mark the grave of Arthur Chevrolet, brother of Chevrolet co-founder Louis Chevrolet. Advertising. Earlier marketing efforts touted efficiency combined with savings interspersed with what could be described as loftier messages. Of the marketing campaigns from more recent decades, See the USA in Your Chevrolet was one of the longest-lasting. In 1949 Chevy sponsored Inside USA on CBS. While this was a short-lived show, the tune created for it got new life in 1951, when Chevy began sponsoring the Dinah Shore Show and Shore sang it at the close of every show. A selection of Chevrolet's more recent marketing campaigns includes the following: See the USA in Your Chevrolet, putting you first keeps us first, it's exciting. Building a better way to see the USA, baseball, hot dogs, apple pie and Chevrolet, now that's more like it, Chevy makes good things happen, USA One taking charge, today's Chevrolet Euro Live It, the heartbeat of America, rock, flag and eagle, from the country that invented rock and roll, genuine Chevrolet, tried, tested, and true, we'll be there, like a rock featuring the Bob Seger song of the same name, an American Revolution, for all life's roads, our country, my truck, America's best trucks, let's go, may the best car win, excellence for everyone, Chevy runs deep, a series of TV commercials were produced with Goodby, Silverstein and Partners, and was unveiled during the week of 2010 MLB World Series. Early commercials include Chevrolet, Anthem, Chevrolet, dogs and pickups, first car, Chevrolet, coming home, Chevrolet Volt, anthem, which positioned Chevy as a brand that is part of the American fabric in song, culture and in most of our pasts in one way or another. In 2011, General Motors announced the campaign would continue. Most television commercials run in this ongoing campaign feature voiceover by television and film star Tim Allen. Chevrolet is the car, driving our world forward. I'm proud. Chevrolet Sonic and Chevrolet Orlando ads were produced by Toronto-based production company Holiday Films. In Quebec, the brand introduced a new tagline, I'm proud. The campaign included commercials in Mandarin, Cantonese, Tamil, Punjabi and Hindi languages. French version of the anthem ad also uses alternate slogan Chevrolet, a fire later. The fully integrated campaign includes TV, print and outdoor element as well as extensive social media. The General Motors brand also held live events, including a concert in Toronto, presentations by parenting expert Nanny Robina and mompreneur Erica Yam, and a live yoga session. Mike Sprunsny, Director of Advertising and Communications for General Motors Canada, claimed that by leveraging the fact that Chevrolet is a global brand, consumers are seeing it in a more favorable light. Slogan in other languages include, Driving Me Your World, Love Life Chevrolet as part of the cruise campaign, outdoor vinyl materials, recycled seat belts and bicycle inner tubes were made into messenger bags, laptop sleeves, and oversized totes. Live Better. What do you play for? Chevrolet sponsors Manchester United, replacing an as the shirt sponsor. The campaign's slogan, What do you play for? Attempts to engage users on social media. Chevrolet also launched multiple sites across the globe under the main Chevrolet Football Club website. Find New Roads. The slogan replaced the previous Chevy Runs Deep tagline, after Chevy Runs Deep campaign had been criticized as ineffectual. External applications of Find New Roads was set to begin globally later in the first quarter of 2013. The first Find New Roads commercial, a 90-second commercial titled Dog and Doe featuring Chevrolet Volt, Spark, Sonic, Impala, Corvette Stingray, was premiered during 2013 Grammy Awards. The campaign was expected to cover 13 product launches for 2013 in the US and 20 introductions throughout the world. Marketing agency, Future Brand, an Interpublic group of companies has been working with General Motors since 2000, who also involved the commissioning of a font that would later sold as Clavica Condensed, as part of redesign of Chevrolet in 2006. In 2010, General Motors replaced the advertising agency Campbell Ewald, also of Interpublic group of companies, with Publicis Worldwide. Campbell Ewald had served Chevrolet since 1919. In May 2010, Chevrolet's advertising account was awarded to Goodby, Silverstein and Partners. As part of the attempt to attract 18 to 24-year-old drivers, General Motors hired MTV Scratch. Some of the collaboration results include Chevy ads showing their cars skydiving, bungee jumping, doing other stunts. The commercial was produced with consultations from students from UCLA, Pepperdine and high schools. Some of the footage was later used in Chevrolet Sonic ad titled Stunt Anthem during Super Bowl XLVI. In March 2012, General Motors announced two competing agencies, San Francisco-based Goodby, Silverstein and Partners, and New York-based McCann Erickson Worldwide, will join to form an equal joint venture company called Commonwealth to handle most of Chevrolet's ads. Prior to the joint venture, Goodby, Silverstein and Partners performed marketing in the U.S., including the Chevy Runs Deep campaign. McCann handled Chevrolet ads in China, Latin America, Mexico, Canada and other markets. Commonwealth would handle and supervise creative work worldwide out of Detroit for all markets except China, India and Uzbekistan, where GM has joint automaking ventures. McCann would continue to handle ads in China and India, and Uzbekistan will be contracted as needed. McLaren-McCann continued on as AOR for the entire GM brand in Canada, but the Chevrolet brand will act as AA Euro OSBK Euro to Detroit a Euro unregistered trademark S creative hub, with content and messaging flowing through Commonwealth, but adapted for the Canadian market. Performance Marketing Group Incorporated manages Chevrolet Racing Euro unregistered trademark S experiential marketing properties for its at-track activation platforms in conjunction with the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, the IZOD IndyCar Series, and the American Le Mans Series with Team Corvette. Chevrolet only naming attempt. In 2010, a memo signed by Chevrolet Sales and Service Vice President Alan Beatty and General Motors Marketing Division Vice President Jim Campbell was sent to Chevrolet employees at its Detroit headquarters, instructing employees to only use Chevrolet when addressing the brand, in order to present a consistent brand message. A postscript to the memo says a sort of cuss jar, a plastic Chevy can, has been placed in the hallway. Every time someone uses Chevy rather than Chevrolet, the note said, the employee is expected to put a quarter in the can. The proceeds were to be spent on a team-building activity. Paul Worthington, head of strategy for Wolf Olins, noted that the branding effort ran counter to a trend in which corporate names had become more casual. Ian Beavis of Nielsen Automotive Group noted that marketers cannot control what consumers call their products, but nicknames do not work in new markets where Chevrolet is trying to get a start. Following the release of the memo, General Motors published a statement claiming the note was in no way discouraging customers or fans from using the Chevy name. Following the 2010 memo incident, Chevy Runs Deep campaign remains to use the Chevy name, while Driving Our World Forward and Find New Roads campaigns uses the Chevrolet name. Watches. In 2007, General Motors allowed AJS Production SA to register the Louis Chevrolet trademark for a line of premium quality Swiss watches marketed under the Louis Chevrolet brand name. Although the watches bear the name of Louis Chevrolet, they are not marketed or produced in association with General Motors. The watch brand pays tribute to Louis Chevrolet, co-founder of the Chevrolet Automobile Company, whose father was a watchmaker and in his childhood helped his father at the workbench. The collection was called Frontenac, the name inherited from the race car company founded by Louis Chevrolet. The Chevrolet watch collection comprises automatic, manually wound and quartz models, equipped with ETA and Ronda movements. The Louis Chevrolet Frontenac watches, manufactured in Porrentruy, the Swiss Jura region, feature the styling cues suggested by the Chevrolet cars. The collection was developed while applying the same materials as used in the car industry. Pearled appliques on the Chevrolet watch's dials remind the metal forms of the old dashboards. The number 8, Chevrolet's racing number, is sported on the case back. See also, General Motors Canada, Supersport, Chevrolet Hall, Mason Truck, Mark IV Big Block Engine Georgia Euro A brand of small cars and SUVs sold through Chevrolet dealerships throughout North America from 1989 a Euro 1997, U.S. Soccer Athlete of the Year a Euro sponsored by Chevrolet. Notes. References. External links, Official Chevrolet site, Official Chevrolet Russia site, Official Chevrolet South Africa site, Official Chevrolet Europe site, Official Chevrolet Middle East, Chevrolet in Egypt.